I feel privileged and very honored to be up here talking before you guys today. A lot of my family is here, my closest friends, a lot of you guys now, the church family, who I've just grown to love very much, are here, especially you, Steve. And honestly, I can talk for days and days to you guys about my history, what I've been through in my life, and at the end of it all, there's no way for you to fully understand. My wife will never even fully understand just how far God's love has brought me. I'll never even understand. Truthfully, I understand it only from my perspective. Someday it will be revealed to me how much mercy, how much grace really has been imparted to me in my life. So that's really just a beautiful story, every individual relationship with God. A little bit of brief family history. I'm Syrian American, born overseas, came here very young, and grew up in the States. We lived in Cleveland, moved to Michigan, and around the time I was about 14 years old, that summer, my parents got divorced. It's just my brother and I have one brother, and that was the first event that kind of began to shape the man who I would eventually become. That's a tough thing to go through. There's a lot of us who have different relationships with our fathers. Some of us don't have a dad, never knew one, or never had one. Some of us came from divorced households like me, where the father is suddenly taken out of the picture, and other challenges. So that makes life kind of difficult, especially when you have two teenage boys, and we kind of had to figure out, coming into our manhood, what it means to be a man. We didn't have a role model, a male role model, that is, and a lot of the values and the lessons we learned came from the amazing women in our life. Thank God every single day for my mom, because she has a heart of gold, is all I have down here, because that's the only way to describe her. She's an angel, one of many that God has placed in my life. And she, from back then till this day, always treated people with love and grace. And a lot of those things that I see now in my walk with Jesus, my mom has done her entire life in terms of her outward generosity, outward love towards other people. And she really taught us the respect for women, respect for other people, and just really how to love. So thank God for that, because we might have, God knows what we would have become without that. She instilled a lot of those things in us. Around that time, high school, very tough time. Some of you guys are in high school, some of you are in college, but even at that age, most of your approval, you seek your approval from the world around you. You're in high school, you're worried about popularity. Do these people like me? Or those people like me? And, oh, she's cute or he's cute. And you're always constantly worried about the world around you. At that time, I remember just always kind of having this longing, seeking love, sort of. And it was like always an emptiness inside of me. I would journal about it and write about it, but outwardly, obviously, would not show any of that. Senior year, had a lot of challenges. That summer, I was at a party. Somebody punched me, sucker punched me, broke my jaw. I did not speak for 32 days. Maybe God wanted me to just shut my mouth for once. But I learned that really changed me a lot, because going into my first year of college, I became very bitter. So I changed my mentality into, I'm not going to be this skinny, nice guy, because I was nice to everybody, and I thought, if you're nice, people are bound to be nice to you, right? And then I got punched for no reason. So I said, okay, I'm going to change my mentality. I kind of put on this alpha male persona. I got really into working out, into the gym, and into my physical fitness. Really, I thought I could transform myself into the man that I wanted to be, to kind of protect myself from ever being hurt by anybody, anything, anywhere. I thought I could guarantee myself my own security. So really that was with the gym, with my physical appearance, with work. I got a full-time job right out of high school doing IT stuff. I was making above average money for an 18-year-old. That quickly became an idol. And of course college, and I thought, okay, I got to have the credentials to also back all of this up. Then I'll be a complete man. And little did I know. And so really I became obsessed with making $1 million. That was my thing. Money had always been a challenge. And I just said, that's going to be one of my goals. I remember one time promising my mom and saying, I promise you I'm going to make $1 million before I'm 30. And I took that to heart. I never forgot it. And I just became so focused on that. Most of my peers, my friends were like, they called us team business, of me and a friend of mine. We would literally have meetings about how we're going to make $1 million and investment ideas and this and that. And just everything. Everything became about making money. Because that's what we thought the world was all about. So I began to have struggles with relationships. And in college, really, I ended up getting into a long-term relationship, finally. I was pretty reckless when I got into college. That whole alpha male thing, I suddenly had big muscles. I had a fast car. As I was working, I bought a fast car. And I thought I was the man. I was very outwardly aggressive, very kind of just playing that alpha male kind of persona. But it's a facade. That's what a persona is. It was fake. It was all external. None of it was anything of what I actually was like on the inside. Ironically, so I got into actually a long-term relationship in college. And looking back on it, the relationship was meaningless. It really wasn't going anywhere. It was just kind of companionship. But for me, in a way, it was like God showing me mercy all along. Now I look back on it because He knew I was being so reckless in my personal life. I was out 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week, doing stupid things. Well, if it's not drag racing my car, it was partying and drinking and just being reckless. I mean, I almost lost my life more times than I can count, whether it be in car crashes or getting into a fight or doing some other foolish thing you do when you're young. It's easy to fall into those traps. In a lot of ways, God pulled me out of that because He saw that it was not going to end well. Alvin quoted a verse last week from Jeremiah. He says, "I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart." And that's beautiful because God knows each and every one of us before we're even formed in our mother's womb. Before you're even born, He knows you. He knows what your personality is going to be like. He knows how obedient or disobedient you're going to be. And He sets out a plan for you. And it's amazing once you start understanding that He has a plan for you and living according to that. So the next phase of my life was kind of encountering Jesus, how that all kind of came to a head. To put it simply, God sent me an angel. Not long, when that relationship ended with my ex, I was so fed up with the world. I said, I can't have it this way, and I thought I was doing right by not partying anymore, just having a girlfriend and going to school and working hard and trying to make my $1 million, but that didn't get me anywhere either. I was furious with God. And I said, that's it, I'm finished. And I told God, I actually yelled at Him, and I said, I'm not going to enter another relationship with any girl until you send me the one, and I'm positive that this is a girl that I know I could marry and would want to marry. Not long after that, probably 6 months or so down the road, I saw Olivia at a party. And I can tell you guys, I could write a book on the emotions I felt that day and what I saw. But when I saw her at this party, we didn't even talk. I didn't have the courage to go up to her and talk to her. And I almost missed my chance, guys. So, but I saw just all of the characteristics of pure love, grace, truthfulness, and just something special. I couldn't get her off my mind. I was just, the whole time on the way home, telling my brother and my mom how I couldn't get this girl. I was like, just something about her. We ended up meeting, by God's grace, not long after that. We fell madly in love. We were engaged 3 months after that. Because we knew. The first night we talked on the phone for 5 hours. And we just kind of knew. And then not long after that, she said, I want to introduce you to some of my family. I had met her beautiful mother already and some of the other family. And there was a couple people in her life that she was very close with because she lived with them for a while. And it was her uncle and aunt, and it's a guy named Eldon, who you might know. So that night, one night we went over there to meet Eldon. We went to their house, and we sat down. Adele is extremely hospitable. If you've ever been in their house, it's just all kinds, like an assortment. Take notes, young women, from Adele. She is remarkable, so hospitable, and it was just amazing. Like just a beautiful spread of food, and I felt very welcome by her. And then we sat down. Eldon's first question to me, basically, other than the regular conversational, intro fluff, was, "How's your relationship with Jesus?" And I began on this long rant about what I thought about God at that point, because honestly, all I really knew about God at that point was I did believe in God, no doubt. I believed in Him. I prayed, but I was terrified of God. I was scared. So I told him, I said, I believe in God. I believe in heaven and hell, and I think I do more good than bad, and I think at the end, hopefully, I'll end up in heaven. And we had just a normal conversation about it. He listened really more than he talked, which is a very important skill many of us need to learn. He just encouraged me to read the Bible, and he just said, have you ever read the New Testament? And I said, no. He said, well, start in Matthew and just start reading. Read Matthew, read John, and then just keep on going. So I did that. I began reading, and I sought the truth for myself. I would have questions. I would Google. I would ask him what his opinions were on certain things that were challenging to me. I encountered a verse, James 4:8. He says, draw near to God and He will draw near to you. And I said, wow, it can't be that easy, can it? And so that's what I did. I said, okay, let me try this. A lot of my questions became to get answered. It's not rocket science. As soon as you go looking, seek, and you will find, right? So every question I had about God, about His existence, about a relationship with Him, about salvation, popped up right in my face. And it was really beautiful. Obviously, I think the most important verse I encountered was Romans 10:9. Because I discovered that the requirements to be saved are very, very simple. I came from a background where it was do more good than bad. If you're lucky, you might end up in heaven. There's no personal relationship with God. He's not a daddy. He's a judge. And Romans 10:9 says, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. That's it. That's all it says. It does not say God raised Him from the dead. You will be do great things, be a good person, preach great sermons, donate millions of dollars. None of that. It just says, profess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, and you are His. That's it. And so I prayed that prayer that night, and I said, God, if that's all it takes, then you are the Lord of my life and the King of my heart, and I want to live for you. And I believe that you were raised from the dead, and you conquered death and sin and hell for me. And that's when things really began to change. At that point, from then on, I had a new life. But I felt like a new person on the inside, but the challenges did not end. They actually just began. Once you're saved, the process of sanctification begins. That's kind of God cleansing your life. Once you're His, He's going to start pruning and trimming all of those things that are against Him out of your life. And there's the lingering effects of past sins that I had committed and the present sin that I was still living in. I had a lot of old habits I didn't let go of when I found Jesus, but it took a lot of time. Some of them still exist to this day. But it's a work in progress and just submitting to God. And so people who knew me, a lot of my friends, some of my closest friends, they couldn't believe it. They said, who is this guy and what did you do with Basel? And some of them thought it was an act. They said, you're just doing it to impress Smiley Man over there or something to that effect. And that was hurtful.
Superhero name now.
It was hurtful, but it made me introspective. I started to really analyze myself and my life and say, God, is this really me? Am I doing this for you, or am I doing it for myself? And I discovered that once you become saved, once you find Jesus, being a Christian doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you're perfected by Jesus' finished work on the cross. It doesn't mean you yourself are perfect and you'll never stumble. You're still bound to stumble because we still have this flesh until Jesus returns. So long as we live in this body, we're going to have a propensity or a tendency to want to sin. It's what our nature is. And we have to submit our lives to God in order to kind of break away from those old habits. And they die hard. Also, when I first discovered this, I read through the New Testament, I think, in like a couple of months. I mean, I just flew through it. All I wanted to do was just read it. And I became self-righteous. It was bad because I thought I had become good on my own, almost. And I started seeing bad everywhere around me. And I was so critical, and I judged everybody and everything like crazy. And some Christians fall into that trap. And little did I know, really we have to see the plank in our own eye before we see the speck of dust in our brother's.
Preach.
And so I began having struggles. And so I struggled with that. I struggled with myself and with God. And constantly not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough. You know, Satan, when he loses one of his, he goes after them. He'll leave his 99 and he's going to go after that one that he just lost to Jesus. You better believe that. So I began to have attacks. He would come after me either with temptations or with doubt. And he's funny. Satan's funny. Even to this day, it was a blessing to me to kind of learn this. All of us go through this. When we have doubts in our life, Satan's a trickster. He doesn't come in your mind and say, Robbie, you're not good enough. Or we are not good enough, or anything like that. He'll place that doubt in your mind in the first person. He'll make you think, I'm not good enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not who I want to be. God does not love me. And it's that first person that really, that's the deepest kind of doubt that you can have inside of you. But you have to know that you are righteous because of Jesus, not because of anything we did. Amen. So when he places that doubt in your mind, our answer is, I am the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. Okay, so by Jesus' sacrifice, we became righteous. We exchanged. Jesus took our sin, we became righteous. And so now to this day, I literally profess that when I do sin, as that guilt is setting in, I just say, God, I'm sorry, forgive me, and I'm just so glad you died for me, and I'm glad your blood covers me, Lord, because the world sees my sin, and you see me as righteous and perfect because of your son's blood. A lot of that struggle ties into Romans 7 that Eldon just read through. The book of Romans was such a blessing to me. I read it, ended up reading that book a couple of times over and over again. Paul talks about his struggle. The Apostle Paul. Some of you guys understand and some of you might not. He was the Apostle of Grace. He is just the chief of understanding God's grace. He was a Pharisee. He persecuted Christians. And he was a master of the law. Even he understood that he had a battle with his flesh. He talks about it. He said, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. I keep on doing what I don't want to do, and what I do want to do, I cannot do. And that's a real struggle I think a lot of people encounter. And it's that battle when you encounter that process. And it was such a blessing to me. At the end of chapter 7, Eldon read Romans 8:1. You just have to keep reading. Just keep reading your Bible. If you just stopped at the end of Romans 7, you still might have not fully grasped that you were made perfect by Jesus. But if you read Romans 8:1, it says, therefore there is now no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. It's condemnation that makes us fear, that makes us have anxiety, makes us have stress. Once you understand that you're no longer condemned in the eyes of God, you are freed from that. You're liberated from that feeling, that overwhelming feeling of having done something wrong, because you know Jesus already paid it. So you move on. You say, you don't hold on to those things. Like Eldon was saying, how about we just move on from these things? Let's stop beating ourselves up. Understand it's not you, it's what he did on the cross. And that was a blessing to me to find out. And Galatians 2:20 became one of my favorite verses. And it says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Amen. The greatest love in the entire world that we're not even capable of, to its fullest extent, is called agape in Greek, the sacrificial love. If you've encountered that kind of love, it's God's love for us. And if you've encountered it, you'll know, because it changes you. You can't help but change. So that's really one indicator of, honestly, the biggest testimony that God is real and that God exists is by the millions, probably billions of lives that have been radically changed by people who found Jesus and found their salvation in Jesus' finished work. My story is nothing. There's people who've been on death row who have been saved, and people who have killed many people and been just had horrible, horrible stories, and God opened their eyes. And a lot of them became the biggest proponents of Jesus. Louis Zampanelli, the new guy with that new movie, whatever that's called, Army guy, Unbroken, yeah. Trapped at sea for 47 days. He heard Billy Graham speak before he went out to war. He was an Olympic athlete. Trapped at sea after being shot down by Japanese. And he just told God, if you get me out of here, I will give my life to you. He went through a lot of trials and tribulations. God pulled him out of it. He still had some challenges, but he ended up submitting his life to God, and he lived his whole life for him, talking about his goodness and what he had done. It's a beautiful thing. There's still struggles in life, right? Even when we understand these things, we're not condemned. We live for Jesus. We're made righteous because of him. We still go through struggles. God never says, I'm going to take you around the storm. He says, I'm going to take you through the storm. Okay, he's our rock, so you got to cling on to him. We're still going to have difficulties until Jesus comes back. That's why we look forward to his return. This life is full of storms. If you're not coming out of one, you're heading into one, guys. So you've got to have something to cling on to, because we're frail. Whether we admit it or not, no matter how many muscles and cars and money and everything else we have, you're going to be broken by some trial or tribulation in your life unless you have a rock to depend on. And Jesus is that rock. John Piper, a very famous Calvinist preacher, once said, the confidence that a sovereign God governs for your good all the pain and all the pleasure that you will ever experience is an incomparable refuge and security and hope and power in your life. He's talking about Romans 8:28, where it says, and we know that God works all things for the good of those who love him. So if you love God, you live for him, you get through any storm in life. So for me, my only desire in my life is to just know God more and have more of his presence in my life, practicing his presence. It's not about building up knowledge. I got really into apologetics and battling the science crowd with Christian Science and all of that. And that's all great because there's a purpose for it, and it does serve the purpose. But for me, my number one priority is being close to God and not just talking about him, but talking to him. A lot of us fall into that. And Moses understood that. Moses, in Exodus 33, God told him, take these people and take them to this other land. And Moses wasn't shy. He told God, he would talk back almost to God and said, there's just no way, God. He said, we are not leaving this place unless you go with us, because we know we're done if we go without you. And God is amazing. Even back then, before grace, before all of that, he showed his grace to the nation of Israel. He replied to Moses, he said, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. In other words, don't worry. Go through this land where you guys have many dangers you might face, but I'm going to personally go with you. And that's what we need. We should practice God's presence because we need him, not just today, any Sunday when we worship and pray and come to church, but I need God all week long. I need God when I go to work Monday morning, when I'm on the freeway on 75 and it's snowy and slushy, and when I go to work and there's difficulties with employees, co-workers, clients, challenges, deadlines to meet, stress, all that stress. God's presence is the only thing that relieves us of that. It's funny because Mayo Clinic, for a couple of us, there's a couple, not us, but Laffey, for instance, is in medical school. Some of you guys are in medical school or training for that kind of field. The Mayo Clinic says over 70% of illnesses have stress as one of its root causes. The Mayo Clinic, a very well-known clinic in the United States. Stress, and stress, like we talked about, is really the root of stress is fear, the root of fear is condemnation. But understanding that you're no longer condemned and your life is in Jesus, you can move on. Most importantly, I think Jesus, his most important commandment to the apostles before he left them was, he just told them, love one another, and that's how the world will know that you are of me. Just by showing people love. And it's not by doing anything. Again, he didn't tell them go out and do this. He did say go out and preach to the nations and make new believers, but his main commandment to them was love the Lord your God and love one another. And that's how people will know. And really that's the main requirement, is outward love. My mom, her entire life, has shown outward, selfless love towards anybody from any background, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, anybody that she encounters immediately sees and senses her love. And that's because that love of God is in her. The most important thing, guys, is spending time with God. Like I just mentioned, practicing His presence. Draw near to Him. You guys have all heard the cliche, you reap what you sow, right? Yes, I think everybody has. I think the most important thing for us to sow is time with God. Amen. Sow some time with Him. Plant some seeds so that those things can blossom, and that His mercies can, and His presence can just be the center of your life. And that way you can outwardly love, outwardly forgive. Once you guys understand, once we understand that God's love for us, the depth of God's love for us. See, I never learned that growing up. The biggest thing I've learned, and I thank God for it, was seeing how much He loved me, how much mercy He's had on me. And once you see how loved you are, you can love. Once you see how forgiven you are, you can forgive. Amen. People who have hurt you more than anybody has hurt you. The most unforgivable sin. People who have taken advantage of you, stolen from you, stabbed you in the back, lied to you. You can forgive those people. Because you're forgiven. Once you understand that, you can't just say, "Oh yeah, I forgive." No. There's none of that. Because once you see the love, you can outwardly love. Once you see your forgiveness, you can outwardly forgive as well. That's really the key to living, guys, is understanding that love. And when you spend that time with God in prayer, when I spend time with God and I get down on my knees and I pray, or if I lay in bed and pray or whatever, it's the number one thing. Because a lot of people, there's been people who've been amazing preachers and gone out and just spread the gospel, talked about Jesus their whole lives, and come to find out they never really accepted Him. Because they just played church. They played Christianity. They put on a facade. But when you pray and you actually spend that time with God, you're transparent. You can't lie. I can't lie when I'm in front of God. I can lie to anybody in this room. My wife, my son included. Anybody. My brother, who's known me my whole life, thinks just like me. I can lie to him. I can't lie to God about my thoughts, about my feelings, how I was angry with somebody, or I lusted in my mind, or lied, or did something. You're transparent. And as soon as you have that transparent relationship with God, you do spend that time, you pray, that's when your intentions are revealed. Once you get that off of your chest and you say, "You died for me, thank you," that's when your healing can begin. So I pray that anybody here who has not accepted Jesus or really understood the relationship and the value of that, everything kind of rides on that. I hope you guys come to see that. I pray for that. And there's just such a new life to be had. The old you is not you, and the old me is not me. And I have a new life in Jesus, and I'm so thankful for it. And I just want to share it with everybody. And thank you for letting me share my story. Love you guys. Thank you.
Good job.